Hey guys, it's me, ya girl. So last week, since I could not stop talking about this freaking cookbook, Bread Baking for Beginners by Bonnie O'Hara, if you haven't heard of it, go look it up or watch my last video because I cannot shut up about it apparently. This cookbook is seriously the best thing ever. I am addicted to it now thanks to Jenna Fisher. I decided to follow a recipe in this book and I guess make a little series about following the cookbook, so follow the cookbook, I guess we'll call it. I've tried a couple recipes so far in here. I tried the 12-hour fermented loaf, which is a no-knead bread. I've made the brioche, which is amazing. If you buy this cookbook and you want to try any recipe in it, I suggest the brioche recipe because it is amazing, and make French toast out of it. Highly recommend it. So I decided to take a gander at making the beginner sourdough loaf, which is one of the last chapters in her book, and she suggests making every other recipe and following the book from beginning to end, but yeah, that's not me. I like a challenge. To make sourdough bread, its whole process, you basically have to start it like at least a week in advance because you need to make something called a starter. And she discusses a starter and how to make one and how digestible and easy it can be in this book. She literally talks about everything. The whole beginning chapter is dedicated to the science behind making bread, which is super helpful, and she answers almost any question that you can imagine in here. You have to start by making a starter, which I started about 2.5 weeks ago. This is my starter. Her name is Wilma. She started out a little rough. I had her in a plastic container, and she did start to bubble a lot. She grew and doubled in size like you're supposed to. About, I want to say, 5 days into the fermentation process, she started to separate. She was flat. She wasn't bubbly and active. It was just flat in here, and then it was like a liquid layer at the top. And yeah, so I decided, and I was also using just standard all-purpose flour. I didn't think that I needed to go and buy the fancy stuff, but yeah, I was wrong. You do. So I think a week ago, I moved her into this nice big glass mason jar. I bought fancy all-purpose flour that is unbleached, just the good stuff. It's, I believe, the King Arthur brand, but yeah, and I was using standard whole wheat flour, and it ended up working out really well. So about a week ago when I did that, I think the next day, she literally doubled in size and poured over the edge, which is why she's so dirty around the edges. But now I've been feeding her every day. The recipe that Bonnie says, I believe, 50 grams of whole wheat flour, 50 grams of all-purpose flour, and then 100 grams of water every day. And also you have to take out half of the original mixture. To learn more about that, you can buy the book, read it. It's a really great read. Or you could just do a quick Google search if you don't feel like buying the book, but I suggest buying the book because it is definitely worth it. Today, I'm going to be making, technically yesterday, but I'm going to be making sourdough. It is an entire day process, technically a 2-day process because you have to start it the night before. But yeah, I will show you everything that I did. A lot of the clips are from my phone, so they might not be best quality, but yeah, they're there. And yeah, let's get started on this beautiful adventure. Hello. So this is me the night before, and I'm prepping my sourdough starter. So I'll show you what I have. So this is a mixture of my previous starter, who right here, her name is Wilma. She's pretty active. I just fed her, so she's a little bit dead at the moment. Not dead, but she's a little asleep at the moment. But yes, so this is going to be the prepared starter that's going to go into the sourdough itself. You can see that there's a little bit of gas being produced. This is what's going to rise the bread, as opposed to a yeast that's used in traditional bread. Sourdough is special because it gets a starter. So this has to sit for 12 hours. So I'm going to check it in the morning. It should be good to go in the morning. It should be nice and active and doubled in size. And that'll give us the go-ahead to keep working on the sourdough. Good morning. It is 9 a.m. So I'm just going to show you what's happening. And then later on I'll let you know. And I'll, get all fancy and yeah, all that. My sourdough starter that I prepared for the sourdough loaf is doubled in size. It's ready to go. It's been sitting since yesterday at like 6 o'clock. It usually only sits for 12 hours. But yeah, I let it sit a lot longer than that. Not a lot, but whatever, like 14 hours instead. So, I just measured out all the ingredients. This is 1,000 grams of flour with 20 grams of salt. And then over here we have 680 grams of water in total. And here's the prepared sourdough starter that we fermented for 12 hours. So we're gonna get these together, hand knead them, and yeah, I'll show you what that's gonna look like. So another big thing that Bonnie discusses in her book is making sure that the temperature of the bread turns out, like the dough itself turns out to be, I believe it's 76 degrees. So you always have to make sure that the water and the flour coincide with each other, and you have to measure the temperature of the flour to figure out what temperature you need the water to be. So I have this fancy little laser temp thermometer, an infrared thermometer, that's what it's called, and I'm gonna check the flour. So the flour is at 71 degrees. That means the water has to be about 80 degrees. So now we're gonna combine the starter. And it also should smell nice and fruity. If it smells like alcohol, you are not doing it right, but that goes with the starter itself from beginning to end. Okay, now after I add the starter, I'm gonna add in all the water, so, oh, okay. And the flour. Hopefully, next thing I invest in will be a bigger bowl, because this is not going to suffice forever. I made this last week in the same bowl, and it did not turn out because my starter wasn't mature enough, but it still ended up being just the right amount of space. So now we just go straight in with our hands. Obviously clean hands. I mean, you can do dirty hands if you're the only one eating it, but like, that's disgusting, so I would not recommend it, but yeah. So now we're just gonna kind of massage it in and get it until, mix it until it starts to come together. The tip that I learned from Bonnie O'Hara is always mix with one hand and hold the bowl with the other one, so that way you at least always have a clean hand. And that's helpful when it comes to the end of the mixing, when you have this much dough stuck to your hands. All right, as you can see, it's starting to come together. It's almost entirely mixed. So we are all nice and mixed together. Now we're gonna let this mixture just sit like this for about 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, to let the flour soak up the water so it becomes a little bit more of a manageable dough as opposed to this big gloopy mess. I wish I could show you guys how my tripod is set up because it is ridiculous. So now this has rested for about 30 minutes, so I'm gonna scrape it out onto here. Probably this is not enough flour, but we can add more as we go. Here we go. This is where a silicone dough scraper would come in handy, but I don't have one, like I said, so I'm gonna just sprinkle a little bit more flour along the top. Okay, and now we're gonna start to knead. So Bonnie just talks about kneading, and the way that she explains the best process is to push it away from you, take it, and then fold it back over, and then turn it. Then do it again, and do a quarter turn. So you push out, take it, you bring it back, and then quarter turn. Or she says to knead this and continue doing this for about 10 minutes until the dough starts to get nice and smooth. As you knead, you can kind of feel the gluten developing. It starts to get a little bit tougher to knead. Alright, so now we're at this nice smooth ball, and I've been kneading for about 10 minutes to get here, so I'm just going to put this dough back into the original bowl that I got it in, and contrary to popular belief, you do not need to grease the bowl. It'll come out perfectly fine. It's a little messy, but that's okay. So I'm going to just use my dough scraper to help me pick it up. Just plop it back in here, and then I'm going to cover it with a floured towel, and it's going to rise for about 3 hours. And then halfway between, I'm going to do a couple of those folds, give it a little bit more gluten development in there. And then, yeah, so about an hour and a half from now, I'm going to knead it a little bit, and then an hour and a half later, it should be ready to be shaped. Alright, so it's been an hour and a half. Now I'm gonna take this dough out and give it a couple turns. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of gluten development in there. It's sticking to the bowl. It feels like nice and airy. It's definitely starting to rise a lot, which is good. Now it's gonna go back into the bowl for another hour and a half. So now you can see it's nice and puffy, and this is exactly what we want. So now we're gonna scrape it out onto here, and then we're gonna cut it into 2 even pieces. Look at that gluten build up. Sourdough is so much cooler than regular bread because you actually like work at it, you make it from start to finish. Whereas the yeast does a lot of the work for you when you just buy regular yeast. Alright, so now I'm going to take this massive glob and I'm going to cut it into 2 even pieces. Okay, I'm going to put 1/2, oh that's not really even, like that looks better. I'm going to put 1 of the globs back into the bowl just so I have the room to work with them. This is when a nice scraper is super helpful. So now we're gonna have to shape the dough. I'm gonna need another one of these mats because these are gonna get huge. And to shape them, we're gonna be doing basically the same thing we did last time where we knead them, except we're gonna be doing that motion to shape them. So here we go. So this one is actually gonna be a little bit different. So stretch it out a little bit, and then I'm gonna lift this part up and bring it to the middle. And then I'm gonna take the bottom part and take it up to meet it. And then now I'm gonna turn it this way. Do the same thing. So like that, and then like this. And I'm gonna do it again. And I'm gonna keep doing that until the dough feels nice and tight. So now these guys are gonna rest on the counter. I'm gonna cover them and they're gonna sit so they can rest before we can proof them. All right, hi, it's me, we're back. Now that I've let this rest on the counter for a little bit, we're gonna start to actually shape it. I have 2 of these baskets with kitchen towels that are floured all ready to go because these are what these are gonna proof in. So yeah, the basket, I have just a wicker basket. Typically they suggest proofing baskets, but it's basically the same thing. Yeah, so I just got 2 of those for like $1 and I'm gonna use that. Now I'm going to put the seam side down. Yeah, so I'm not understanding directions quite properly, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna start to shape this into like a circle-esque shape. Kind of doing a little bit of this. Bonnie, I'm sorry if you're watching this. And now I'm going to transfer this seam side up into the basket. Sprinkle the tops of them with flour and then cover them and let them proof. And in the meantime, I'm going to preheat the oven to 475 degrees with a Dutch oven on the inside so that it gets nice and hot. And these are going to sit for an hour. Oven's going to heat up for an hour so that this can be the best. So now we're going to take our nice and proof sourdoughs. As you can see, it's nice and proofed. If you press it, it's more of like a marshmallow texture, like it bounces back. It's nice and airy. And I'm going to take the Dutch oven that I have in the oven that's been preheating for about an hour and take that out. Since I only have 1 Dutch oven and 2 loaves of bread, I'm gonna have to do 2 rounds of this. So I'm just gonna get the lid off of the Dutch oven. Nice and hot in here. Now I'm going to carefully take this out of the basket, seam side down, like so. And then I'm going to drop it in. And I don't have a razor blade or anything of the sort besides a knife. So now I'm going to do an X onto the top. Probably would have been a little bit better with a razor, but that'll have to suffice. Now I'm gonna put the lid back on, and this is gonna go into the oven for about 25 minutes with the lid on. Okay, so here is one of the finished loaves. I'm gonna try to show you. This is my first attempt at sourdough. Actually, not gonna lie, this is my second attempt at sourdough. First one I did with Wilma before she was mature, so it did not rise. It was like a hockey puck. But this is my first successful attempt. She looks really nice. I wish it was maybe a little bit more golden brown, but honestly, for a first go, this is great. Definitely has a pronounced cringe. If you want to know what that means, look it up or buy her cookbook. She discusses it very well. This is the byproduct of Wilma. She smells great. This one I'm actually giving to my boyfriend's family, so I'm not going to cut this one because I already cut a different loaf. I just wanted to show you what it looked like when it was finished. But yeah, so I am going to try it on camera, even though I already tried it and it's delicious, but I'm still going to just show you what the inside of the loaf looks like. So this is what the inside looks like for my first attempt. It definitely has a lot of air in there. It looks pretty good. It could be better, but this is, like I said, my first attempt at sourdough, and I think it turned out pretty well. So I'm gonna cut a piece off and try it. Got a little jagged, but here we go. Try this. You can taste like the amazing ferment. It's like perfectly sour. This is great. Honestly, buy the cookbook. Do it. If you are not even a great, if you're not a great baker, she teaches you how to be. And if you are a pretty good baker, she'll make you a better baker, I'm telling you. This is great bread. It's honestly so great. It's redeeming for my video last week, which is something I needed because I was very pissed off. But yeah, definitely give this a 10 out of 10. Buy this cookbook. I'll link it down below. You'll be very happy with it, I promise. I made a mess. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't. And also don't forget to use code VEGCAT at armyanimals.com. Support animal welfare, keep animals safe, and support your own little pets that you've rescued or ones that you've bought. No judgments, but just support animals in general. You'll get 10% off your order if you use my code. And yeah, hope to see you back next week. Bye!